But in all seriousness, I think that he asks incredible questions. I think there's the practical pieces, I think, which we'll speak of in a little bit. But every time I'm in a conversation with you, you listen, and then you ask the best questions at the end that we should be thinking about, people who we may not be considering, and to have us all arrive at a better collective decision and understanding. And I really marvel at. I also know you care so deeply. I witness it all the time of supporting the developers, thinking about new mission, relating ministry to church-wide and back, but also helping us think globally of being church together. And so that's what I think he does, among many, many other things.
Same question. What do I do? No, what does she do? Well, she shows up late to every meeting. And I say that with honesty and love. But what I learned, the reason why she shows up late to every meeting with me, is that because if she has 4 minutes in between things, she takes a 10-minute phone call. And that any break, any spare moment, it's like, okay, I can call this person back. I can call this call committee chair. I can call this congregation president. I can search the database looking for a pastor for this church. Like every single moment gets occupied and sucked up. So I just, when she's late for a meeting, I actually know why. It's because she got started in a call with a leader from one of our churches or from a pastor from another place that she's trying as hard as she can to compel to think South Dakota is a good place to come do ministry. And it's not as scary as they think. And having grown up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, went to school and seminary in Chicago, and took my first call in a town of 900 in South Dakota, I can appreciate a little bit. You have to help people imagine how the Spirit might be calling them to something they've never considered before. So she's late to everything, and because the Spirit has its own time, and it doesn't match my Google Calendar.
Thank you. Now, in your own words, share with the fine folks of the assembly what it is that you do here. Well, I think really from the practical to the spiritual, right? Like practically, I see my role as helping the bishop do her job well. Anything she needs, that is my call, to help our bishop care for this synod. My title is accompaniment, and I take that very seriously because accompaniment is how we want to think about globally, locally, how we come alongside people and really walk together. That's what synod really means, is walking together. So I don't see my role as coming into a congregation and telling a congregation what they need, but my role is to really do some deep listening and then try and be one part of the puzzle to help the Spirit make manifest that which God is doing. And so part of that is being with congregations, hearing who they need, and listening intently to rostered leaders, to synod-authorized ministers, people discerning ministry, to help them make their own decisions for themselves. And that's how I kind of see my role. And it's such a pleasure to do that. One thing, when we talk about children and language for children, this week, many of you know that the schools are out, which meant that my two littles came to the office with me a couple days, and they saw my whiteboard. And in my office, there are all of our congregations in transition are written on my whiteboard, and they're a visual for me. And I open it every day, and I look, and I stand there, and I pray. When we talk about the spiritual piece, this is just an aside, but I remember being in seminary and one of my professors asking, will your people who you serve consider it work for you when you take time to pray for them every day? And it's always stuck with me. And so that's part of like the spiritual aspect of my work because I go to bed thinking about our congregations. I wake up thinking about our congregations in a healthy, great boundary way. And so, so I look at this whiteboard, and Gabriel, my oldest, walked in, and he's like, "Mom, what is that?" And I said, "Well, these are all our congregations, and this is what I do. I help our congregations try and find clergy." And he goes, "Mom, you're like the rebellion tracking the empire through the galaxy." So I thought, wow, yes. So there's the language from children of what I get to do.
It's every so often, Renee and I comment that there was a time where I actually thought I wanted her job, and she thought she wanted to be a DEM. And this was before we had these roles, and we've both come to the conclusion that we don't want each other's jobs. So a DEM, Director for Evangelical Mission, practically means that I get to look at where we start new ministries, where we engage in evangelism. I get to help support congregations talking about the fun topic of stewardship and money and how we utilize God's resources and ask God's blessing on what we do, how we engage our communities in mission. And so I love the times that I get to support our numerous and really diverse mission field that we have in South Dakota. And the time that I get to spend in congregations, that's just the best part. Sunday morning, how many of you use the ELW? Okay, and the Green Book? Okay, I'm just telling you, that doesn't matter what hymnal you use. Like 100 churches could all use the same liturgy and the same hymnal, and it doesn't look the same. And I love that every Sunday morning when I get to be in a congregation, worship looks different. When I went and preached on Easter up and see if I can remember, Bison, Indian Creek, and Rosebud, right? Yep. I did that Easter. It snowed my first year in this, but the previous pastor had laminated the bulletin. So it's the same order for worship. In all three of those congregations, worship was really different. And it was the same laminated bulletin. And it was great. I loved it. So the diversity in our worship, even when we use the same hymnal, is just every place we go, the Spirit is alive, and you're worshiping God. And then when I step into our mission partners, every time I learn something new. I think we have some friends from First Lutheran African here this morning. Yep, okay, I see a few hands going up. The last time I was at First Lutheran African, their vicar, Abraham, says, we like to say that when we start on time, but then we're on God's time, so we don't know when we're ending. And it's true. And there's something really beautiful about stepping into a space, engaging in worship, and knowing that it ends when it ends. And it's not about what time the game starts, or what about, next, or whether or not worship lasted more than 46 minutes. There's something beautiful we get to learn from all of our communities of faith on how we get to be present with the Spirit in worship. And so I love that I get to travel and to do these things and to learn from all of our mission partners and to be just engaged in worship everywhere as we talk about how we're going to reach out and share the love of Jesus to neighbors who need to hear good news. And we have a great message of good news that the world needs to hear. And it's just so much fun to see how that gets lived out in all of our congregations. So I get to be a witness to lots of things that happen and then get to help tell that story for what all of you are doing and how we support the work that gets done on our behalf throughout this church.
Thank you. Your next question is, we know lots of ministry is public facing, so share about the joys, share about the things you love that are public facing, but also tell us about these steep mountain climbs, the challenges it takes to get there. Jonathan, you want to go first?
Well, I think you've seen this incredible people we get to work with. I can't believe I get to work with the people like Crystal and Lois. And amazing. I've been calling Aaron Aaron lately, and he's doing amazing over this weekend. I think there's a playfulness, but a seriousness in which we get to conduct our work together, and that is an incredible joy. I think really being a part of installations is really amazing, kind of from point A to point B with congregations or clergy, and walking with them is just huge. When the bishop Facebook messaged me after she was elected 6 years ago, and I thought, what is this woman wanting to talk to me about? And then my life was about to change significantly because you pray, and dangerous things happen when you pray, and you end up in new calls. And so here I got to be. But part of what I did in my own discernment is I called Bishop Emeritus Andrea DeGroot-Nesdal, and she was so gracious to speak with me for about 3 hours. And I basically said, tell me what I'm going to get into if I say yes to this. But I remember specifically her saying, Renee, we have such amazing, faithful, incredible clergy in this synod. And that has absolutely been true. It is such a gift to know the ways you serve, the diversity, the gifts you bring, and that I just can't believe I get to support you in what you do. And not only that, but people are discerning calls, people who serve as Synod authorized ministers. That is really incredibly meaningful to me. I think the joy too is really the Spirit of God. Honestly, I do not do this of my own will or power. It is a witness to God's work and the Spirit. And oftentimes I'll just kind of move into the challenge. I want the Spirit of God to work faster than the Spirit of God does. And so I think that call process, our polity in the ELCA, is both gift and challenge. One is congregations can call who you feel called to call. I can't tell you who to call. And with clergy, I can't pick you up and say, guess what? You get to go to, right, A, B, C. And that's a good thing, but it's also a challenge because there may not be clergy who want to go to certain places, or there may not be congregations who are open to calling other clergy who God is calling into the ministry. And so that is always a little bit of a dance and a deep prayer life to trust that God is working in all things, even when we can't see the results. And so some congregations wait 1, 2, some 3 years, and that bothers me deeply and troubles me because I am an achiever off the chart. And if I can't achieve, getting pastors for calls, it really is hard. And so that's what I would name as a deep challenge. Among many, I think we have such political divisions, and those are really difficult. And so the challenge, I think, is to continually ground ourselves in what unites us with it, which is Jesus Christ. It's just Jesus, right? Who gives us all we need, and everything else is periphery. And so what I think is so painful all the time is that when we lose our focus, and the focus should be on Christ. And the truth is, no matter who is in your pulpit, you are the church where you are planted, period. And you have a mission to do. And so I think that's what's both exciting and challenging about the work I do. And I could go on, but I'm going to stop. Did I give you enough time to think?
Ironically, no, because I was listening, and not try, because we're told to do that. Don't think about our response. Now I need a Snickers. So sometimes I think the joy and challenges are somewhat connected. I remember the first few congregations that I visited, or the first few months that I was kind of on the road visiting churches. Here was the constant refrain that I remember hearing. We just wish we had 50 kids in Sunday school like we used to. I'm like, okay, do you have 50 kids in your county? No. Okay, do you have any kids in your church? Yes. All right. Let's talk about who's here. Right? So that was kind of the refrain early on. And then just trying to wrestle with what that challenge meant and that deep longing and the dreaming and maybe even the mourning that's there. But then Lily releases what the next grant looks like. It's like, okay, nurturing children in worship and prayer. Here's the listening we've been doing. Here's the conversations and the struggles we hear from congregations. Is there an opportunity to take that and to do something with it? And then as a staff to kind of dream what that might look like, to then put in a second application, to then get a grant that I think in this next couple years is really going to help support congregations and maybe redreaming that challenge of, gosh, we just wish we had 50 kids in Sunday school like we used to. Because in some ways that's never, if we're always just trying to seek what was 50 years ago, we're never going to live into that because it probably wasn't even true 50 years ago. If we're honest with what it was like, we tend to remember things a different way than they were. But our challenge is to always be the church today, looking into the future. So I think some of the joy in this work is to hear the struggles, the longings, and to just sit and wrestle and pray, waiting for God to offer the next step. And there's a real joy then in getting $1 million to help do that. Right? But that all began with listening to the concerns of congregations. This was not the Synod staff going, you know what every church needs? Every church needs a program that does this. And that's not what this is all going to look like when it's going to be helping congregations learn about what brain development's happening in kids and thinking through what makes sense for them. So I'm excited for those opportunities. All right, I'm going to get personal with the challenge. I've been in this role a year and a half, and while I understood that probably this was coming, what I was not prepared for was how quickly it would turn into the Synod's here. And sometimes it's joking. Oh, I walk into a room, and I've been in this role now a month. Oh, the Synod's here, we should be quiet. But it's kind of a real thing there. And being a church-wide employee also, it's like doubly bad. Because then I walk in the Synod office, and they go, church-wide's here. Right. And I walk back home. Oh, Dad's home again. So the challenge, I think, partly is in a world that continues to be divided, that continues to other, that continues to insulate and not look for the ways that we can collaborate and listen and be church together. And I love the tension in my job of being a pastor who wants to talk about Jesus, to being on a Synod staff trying to support congregations and leaders in doing it, to also being a church-wide employee that looks at how we do this across the church and globally. Like there's a tension in this that's beautiful, but it's hard work at times. So I think that's, for me, the challenge is to kind of continue to live in that change of relationship with colleagues and friends, and we're not going to fix this easily, but how do we change the narrative to start actually just wanting to be in a relationship and wanting to struggle together so that we could come up with something better that actually gets us back to proclaiming Jesus.
Thank you. Our time together is so short, so this is the last question. You're supposed to go, "Aw." Thank you. What are your hopes and prayers for the future of the church?
My hope and prayer for the future of this church. I think this is simple. Your kingdom come, your will be done. I think Jesus gives us that model. I'm really inspired by the writings of N.T. Wright and his description of the Lord's Prayer and his book. Recommend it, but he says we pray the Lord's Prayer backwards, and that we need to start with your kingdom come, and then everything else we pray after that helps us live into what that means. And so my hope is that we keep starting prayer in our life of work together with what it means for God's kingdom to be present among us, to recognize the places that Jesus' work and forgiveness and grace is already richly abundant around us, and that that's what really transforms the world and allows us to be the true witness for who we are. Did that come close? Follow that.
Dang it. Well, you did get triple the votes that I did for Bishop. So, it's all right. I think, in all seriousness, I think the state of the Synod by the bishop gives me a ton of hope. I mean, we don't sit there twiddling our thumbs and be like, oh, pour this or pour that. I mean, we are trying to say, all right, like what is the Spirit up to? We have so many amazing congregations, and I love being at First Lutheran African, where by the time I get to preach, I'm so thirsty because we've been dancing for an hour and a half. To where, like, I go somewhere and we really got to be done in 50 minutes. You got it, right? And so it's this incredible diversity across the church, and yet we're all one. And I think what Bishop was saying is make us one, not number one. This is a story that I heard, actually, my mother-in-law had said that Barbara Lundblad preached that at the original assembly where the ELCA became the ELCA, in 88, 89, and said, make us one, not number one. And I think that still continues to be what God is doing. Despite our hugely diverse congregations and people, and I'm so grateful for that. I'll share one more thing, too, that when I asked Bishop Constanza, when she was bishop-elect, why me? Like, you don't really know me all that well. Why me? And she said, because I know that you will speak resurrection in the face of death. And that is an incredible, deep witness of mine that God is always working new life in every situation, no matter what happens. And I just believe that and see that in all the life of our congregations, our clergy, that God is a God of resurrection. And if we do believe, indeed, that Christ has resurrected from the dead, then there's a lot of hope in that. And there's a lot that we can be seeing and doing with the scrap piles and all these other things, because God is doing a new thing all the time. And I hope and pray that I can do that for the next 6 years, is to continue to witness to Jesus' resurrection and life and death, because it matters. Deeply matters. And so it's just an incredible privilege to do this. We're so hopeful and energetic for our next 6 years together.
For the genuine ways you show up for your call here, I know you come and you're the Synod, but we are your Synod, and I at least am proud to be so. So thank you.
All right, now he's going to get you all speaking. Right? Right? Right.
Hello. Okay. Do you have the slides? All right. So I remember when Bishop Constanza first started as bishop, she made the tour around and kind of asked these series of questions. trying to get us to think through what the ministry of the Synod was going to look like. And, it's every so often, it's good to start turning to each other to hear these same stories, to hear these same questions, to feel, to listen to one another about what gives you joy, what keeps you up, where do you see life possible, and the work that's happening in your congregation. So you get to be inspired and maybe supported each other in this work. And we're going to take a few moments, because everyone loves when the pastor in the sermon makes you turn to a neighbor and talk, right? Amen? And all you pastors who do that, now tables are turned. So you're going to have to talk to your neighbor just a little bit. But we have the first question. And I don't know, can we put on the 2-minute timer on this too?
Yes, because we have 10 minutes.
Yeah, that way you all know exactly how long you get, how much time you have to kill. But in your congregational life, what keeps you up at night? Is there anything that causes you to lose sleep? Maybe worries or excitement. You got less than 2 minutes now. Turn to someone.
Yeah, there we go. That's all right. Leave it on. I don't care. You don't have to talk to me. That says something too. Yeah, well, good. We'll keep it that way. Be hard.
30 seconds.
Well, I think Michael Jordan and Jonathan Murdoch are about the same year.
Time. The Lord be with you. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, are there only two responses? Any two volunteers to share something that keeps you up at night, or share someone you heard someone else say? Our children. Right, so our children and the really lives that are at risk in the congregation that you serve, in this case particularly church on the street, those who are experiencing hunger and homelessness and lack of access to health care, and the very real lives that are there. There are lots of things that keep us up at night, and sometimes the only antidote to that is prayer, and to be able to share those burdens with others. And it's one of the beautiful things about being church together is we can name those things, not that they get fixed, but at least we know we don't carry it alone. All right, next question. What gives you joy? Oh, we got another one, another. Is this something that keeps you up at night, or you just have, okay.
why am I the only high schooler in my church that takes all of the opportunities that are given to me?
Wow, okay. Would you like me to give you an answer to that now, or no? Great, the questions, we have more things that keep us up, okay. Beginning of the call process. That's keeping Renee up too. All right, I'm excited about this, but there's also a movement sometimes we have to make to not get stuck in the things that keep us up at night, to also recognize the joy that is there and the ways that the Spirit is bringing new life to places that seem broken. So you got 2 minutes. I hope no people aren't quiet for this. Share. What gives you joy? If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. No, we're getting there. All right. Were there any joys, or did you just keep going on the list of things that kept you up? Any examples? Was anyone willing to share an example of joy? I see a couple hands. Yes. So you had a joy that the call process has come to a conclusion. You know, I think that is, that's necessary, right? It is a really real concern to have the beginning this process and then also hear the joy of new life that comes when that goes well. Yep. Right. There's another hand back here. Yeah. All right. So, best day ever. I'm going to repeat some of this just so we're like online people, but child escapes parents and gets to be held by pastor during parts of worship. That's every pastor. It was always my worst nightmare with young kids that they would escape to find me. But Amen when it happens. Yeah.
This is my first time at a South Dakota Synod gathering. I've been back in the 90s. I went to an awful lot of them in the Twin Cities Synod. And when back there was a lot of people who showed up for the night sermon carrying an axe. I see none of that conflict. And I want to say that I've seen something that is dear to my heart, and that is I see a huge emphasis on what I call servant evangelism. So thank you for that. I just enjoyed it.
All right, so a joy on seeing, yeah. The joy in seeing servant evangelism and not so much carrying around knives and axes for each other. All right, I see up front, and then I'll come back there, and then over there, and then we're going to move on. So,
I'm the director of children's ministries at our church in Spearfish, and between November 1st and January 31st, we have had 7 new babies born to families in our congregation. And I went to Don Rudman's breakout yesterday and got just energized about, I mean, we already do ministry with them. We do a newsletter ministry, a ministry by mail thing, and it's wonderful. But now I want to capture that group with all those little babies. Number one, you know, to be there for them and love on them. But then I get to hold babies. And it just brings me such great joy to think about what more can we be doing.
all right. Okay. You, Lisa?